Tom, I know you're an avid reader, and between us we've spoken on a range of subjects. And one of the subjects which I know we both have an interest in is spirituality, religions, belief systems. Could you give me one reason why you think Taoism or Buddhism would be an interesting topic to delve into?
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to stick to one example. The field is vast. We're talking about over 3,500 years in the case of Taoism, 3,000 years in the case of Buddhism, but I'll try to stick to the requirements of your particular question. And I'll choose the principle of polarity to illustrate my answer. To my knowledge, in Western religion, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, this principle is not understood or expressed at any point. So let me start by defining the principle of polarity. It means that instead of conceptualizing existence as a linear pole between goods on one hand and evil on the other, we conceptualize the human experience as a vast circle. And you're all familiar, I presume, with the ideogram of yin and yang in Taoism, where there's black and white and they're interlocked, and inside each one is a little bit of the other. Now think of the perimeter of the circle. In Christianity, for example, a person will strive towards good their entire life, and the more they go along the continuum towards good, the further they will be from evil. So they try to gain their salvation by moving in a linear continuum. And the idea is after that comes paradise. So it's really on a linear basis. In Eastern thought generally, and in Taoism more specifically, with this concept of the circle, what do they say? Polarity states that if your actions are overdetermined, or in other words, if you try too hard to achieve one particular objective, you will tend to go around to the other side of the circle and produce the opposite effect. Now, how interesting is this, and what applications? I submit it's very interesting for the following reason. A born-again Christian preacher, for example, that's preaching hellfire and damnation and condemning sexual iniquity and everything, in some instances will find himself in a seedy motel with a hooker, excuse my language, because he's trying so hard to be virtuous and he's trying so hard to be self-righteous that, as Lao Tzu said, who is the founder of Taoism, he said self-righteousness is the thief of virtue. If you try too hard to be one thing, you will become the opposite. In courts in China, there's a sign above the courts when you go in, and it says, "Justice is an arrangement between scoundrels." This is a practical application of polarity. You don't go into a court of justice thinking, I am going to be vindicated, I am right, I am self-righteous. They remind you, reality is not black and white, it's shades of gray. You think you have one truth, but we're going to hear both sides of the story, and the result will probably be somewhere in between. So the principle of polarity, again, warns people expressly not to try too hard. If a man commits 24 hours a day or all of his energy to becoming rich and successful, he may lose his family, he may lose his wife, he may even lose his money, paradoxically, because he's earning his money so hard that his manager or his accountant is stealing the money from him. So in way of conclusion, I would state that as opposed to a Manichaean view of the opposition of good versus evil, that in the East they understood thousands of years ago that human nature and our relationship to the universe and our own psyches was more complex. And again, that by trying to keep the golden mean, as Aristotle said, and by trying to stick more towards the center of the wheel, we have a tendency to be more balanced as human beings.